This week, back in 1998, two PhD students at Stanford started a company. What was it? If you say, I'll Google it, well, you already have the answer. Google, and it has grown so ubiquitous that last year a judge found it violated the Antitrust Act. This week that judge came out with some sanctions, but somewhat weaker than what the government had asked for. And Rick, did Google need to be trimmed back?
They certainly have a monopoly in search engine. About 90%, more than 90% of searches go through their search engine. But I agree that the judge was right in not splitting the company up. And I think it's instructive to go back to about 25 years ago when Microsoft was the big bad internet company, and they actually were found to have a monopoly over both operating systems and the search engine, the browser, Internet Explorer, if you remember. They were found to have a monopoly, and the initial finding was that they were going to be broken up into two companies, the way many people want Google to be broken up. They appealed. They came to an agreement that called for changing their behavior, very similar to what the judges ruled in the Google case. Now, come ahead 25 years from now. Is Microsoft ruling the world the way we feared it was going to be 25 years ago? No. In fact, both their browser and search engine account for less than 5% of the market share. The point I want to make isn't that monopolies don't matter, but in the world of high tech, monopoly power can be very fleeting. Microsoft was very powerful, not anymore. IBM, Intel was the big bad chip company, now it's NVIDIA. So the point is, I think the market deals with these issues over time better than a judge going and trying to micromanage the business.
The thing with tech companies is the economy of scale and the investment is so large that some companies end up being kind of monopolists in those areas. But I mean, Rick and I would agree as economists that monopoly creates less of the product at a higher price, and it creates a welfare loss in the society. So as a result, I mean, if Google now shares all this information, and there should be antitrust laws and litigation, if they share the information and it helps out in actually reducing its monopoly over search engines, then it will help. But I will tell the viewers that, look, I mean, if you are doing something for free, right? If you use something for free, then you are the product, and we all know that. So if you don't want the hold of Google, there is a wonderful browser called Vivaldi. It is made in Europe. There's a wonderful browser called Brave. You don't have to depend on Google. You can pay for your email account. There are wonderful places like Runbox, Photon, Proton Email from Switzerland. You can use these services. But if you depend on completely free services that Google is going to offer you, Google is going to snap up your data a little bit and sell it because you are the product there. But I don't know whether they should have been broken up or not, but I agree with Rick that in the tech industry, it's so fast moving, Google's monopoly might not be existing in a few years. Who knows?
AI bots are already cutting into their search engine.
That's right.
Market.
Right, I was going to ask Sarah about, won't maybe AI take the place of search engines and then thus diminish Google's power?
Well, it could, right? I think a lot of people, myself included, now find some AI programs actually much more useful for research that I want to do, much easier, much quicker, much more precise than a general Google search, which often includes ads and things that I'm supposed to buy, that's not why I'm on there typically.
Can you give an example of how you do use AI that's really helpful?
Yeah, for a class I'm teaching, I was looking for specific quotes about how liberal commentators were talking about the MAGA movement. And I wanted to sort of see the evolution over time. And so I used ChatGPT, came up with not only really great quotes, but the timeline and kind of an analysis of how those have changed. And that would have been very difficult for me to do with a Google search, to try to find those quotes, to try to understand the evolution of them. And so, I do think they're facing some competition, which is a good thing, right? That's what we want. We want more competition. And so I think, that any kind of effort, though, I would sort of disagree with my colleagues a little bit in the sense that these tech companies are huge and have tons of money. So we might say, yeah, they're going to face some competition, but they're still amassing huge amounts of money, which they pour back into lobbying, which then affects the kind of regulations or lack thereof that we're getting around these very tech issues. So I still think there's a role to play to sort of try to break them up a little bit.
Tara, what about breaking them up a little bit more?
You know, I'll be honest, I'm not sure if breaking them up a little bit more will really solve anything, because as long as there is an opportunity to make money off of, you know, what you search for and your data, someone out there is going to find it. The other thing is that, and I was thinking about what Anirban was saying about the number of browsers that are out there. Let's be realistic about most of us as human beings. You know, other than somebody who's really frustrated by the ads, who may go looking for, you know, DuckDuckGo or something like that, most people are just going to use whatever is a search engine on whatever, you know, their computer came with.
What they're familiar with.
Exactly.
And that's where one of the rulings, they can't require that Google be the only browser on there. They can still pay, but they can't use their power to
Google can pay to
have theirs on
search
there to be
engine.
preferred, but they're not able to go to someone and say, you cannot carry somebody else's browser, which will at least give people more choice.
Exactly. You know, so that's what I'm hoping, is that there really will come some choice out of this, and that people will utilize that choice, because I think the more choice people utilize, the more Google will be a little less willing to maybe sell people's data, et cetera, because it begins to lose market share.
Good. And Anirban, Google has really become a big part of our culture, though.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot really imagine doing research or even living my life without Google, right? Whatever the Google, you know, all this stuff about Google, I actually was searching in Google. But, you know, on the whole, I would ask people, if you want to avoid this Big Brother surveillance, use VPN. There are many other options you can do. You can watch things, but you can really secure your data over the long run.
Well, we will have to see how this turns out. The court case may be appealed, and it may take a long time to know.